Hey everyone, welcome to the Incubator podcast. I'm your co-host Darren Boyd.
And this is Satbir Sran. Really excited today to bring you Craig Martin, VP over at Ahead, of the VP of the Digital Solutions Group, I might add. And with that, Craig, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you help us and our audience learn a little bit more about you, who you are, and Ahead?
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure. It's good to be here. So VP of Digital Solutions at Ahead. My organization, we focus on a lot of more larger transformative engagements, and specifically customers who are looking to kind of change the way they think of technology and get value from technology and modernize themselves. So as many know, there's a pretty big change in the market space, and that tech is taking over everything, but not all organizations are able to get the most value from that. And so our focus is really not just delivering tech, but really helping that organization to set up and operationalize appropriately and deliver features faster, get to market faster, and just become a more innovative organization. And so we kind of take a pretty holistic approach to it, and we are engineering led, but we're also very focused on the business side and the organizational side.
Great, Craig. What, if you wouldn't mind elaborating more about your background that kind of supports the role that you're in today, and perhaps a little bit more about your fun hats as well.
Oh, I was going to go there.
Yeah, I fun hats. I didn't even realize I was wearing a fun hat. So my background is I'm an engineer. I'm always an engineer. I'm a computer scientist. I'm a developer. That's where I came from. Prior to Ahead, I had my own company. It was a machine learning company for cyclists, actually, and we did machine learning algorithms to optimize training plans, and did that for a couple of years. That was really enjoyable and a lot of fun. Prior to that, had a services company that I worked with. I was not the owner of, but helped to build and grow. We specialized in custom services, specifically in the media space. So think of Hulu, HBO Go, Netflix, a lot of the cable companies, so like Charter and Spectrum and Comcast, and helping them to shift over to microservice architecture patterns and transform into the cloud, and so that was my focus prior to that, and helped build that company. We sold and got out, and so my space has been in architecture and engineering and custom development for almost my entire career. I love to. There's something intrinsically satisfying about coming up with an idea, thinking it through, and then building it and watching it come to fruition. I even as a kid, I've always been an engineer. It's just who I am, and so it's how I approach the world of tech and envisioning, and so that's what I do at Ahead, and that's what we do, and we try to bring that to many of our customers.
Yeah, we appreciate the engineering side of you, but also extremely pragmatic solutions come out of your group, and at the same time, ones that are often bleeding edge. They're very innovative, so we really appreciate that. And maybe we can get a little bit in on some of the trends we're seeing out there. Craig, your group covers a lot of space, but if we just focus for a moment just on hybrid cloud, maybe from a basics perspective, what are some of the things? How would you define hybrid cloud in today's market? And what are some of the tenets that we follow as we start thinking about the domain in general?
Yeah. So I'll kind of step back a little. We see a lot of organizations who are running down this path of the on-premises operating model and the cloud operating model, and they're different things, and they operate different. They're bifurcating their organization, and then that's very inefficient. And then what we're also seeing is many organizations are becoming too coupled to the cloud, and not that the cloud doesn't have the promise that it's delivered on, but how coupled am I, and am I making good decisions in this, and what's my cloud exit strategy, and how easy would it for me to be to change cloud providers. And so a lot of our organizations we're working with are seeing are seeing different motivations. And so that hybrid cloud strategy opens up the door to give them a little bit more freedom. And so you don't have to be fully cloud agnostic, but if the workload can run in any environment, that gives you a little bit more freedom to run it where it makes most sense for your business. And then when you do have workloads that are very specific to the cloud, then they'll run. Then you'll have good business motivators for why they're running up in the cloud. Maybe the hardware up there is more optimized for what you're trying to do. Maybe it's more extensible, more scalable. Maybe your DR's up there. It doesn't really matter. But there's actual business motivators for it. And so what we're seeing from a hybrid cloud perspective, a lot of is really to try to bring in a single control plane that can control all your workloads, whether it's on the cloud or in premise or on premise, and then give you the configuration or the freedom to be able to automate where that should run. So the engineers who are deploying maybe don't even know where it is and how it's running. It's the underlying control plane makes that decision, but the motivators for your decision should be configurable from a business perspective as to, hey, this needs to run in the cloud because of these reasons, or no, this is on premise, and kind of and abstract that away from the engineering teams. And so that's a big an area we're seeing a lot of, where we're helping organizations to take those decisions not away from the engineering teams, but allow the individual engineering teams to focus more mental cycles on the features they're building, not where it runs or how it runs. Is what we're seeing a lot more of.
Craig, that's pretty innovative way, or I would say leading edge in terms of where clients are beginning to shift, at least from the way we see things. So now you've talked about this control plane. And I guess the thought comes to mind is, for those that are approached it as segmented on-prem and or cloud, now this control plane helps you orchestrate and think about that as kind of a seamless option, if you will. But what complexity does that introduce into the organization for, call it an engineering leader, an architecture leader, to say, is that just like saying, hey, do I bring this Azure stack or Outpost on-prem? Or can you expand a little bit more on the complexity of the control plane? Or, is it actually very simplified, and it shouldn't be something that gets people wrapped around the axle?
Yeah, so I would say it's relatively simplified. It shouldn't be something that gets someone wrapped around the axles. Someone somewhere needs to own these decisions and how it's built. We push that within the platform engineering team. And so what we're seeing a lot of is the platform engineering teams own a lot of the patterns and technology choices and where things run and how they run. And so less the application development teams. And those we tend to have a platform engineering team that's very focused on the hybrid control plane and managing that and deciding, whether they should bring in more cloud providers or less, and what those rules are. Once the control plane's built, it's relatively easy to maintain. If you've built it properly, it should be configurable. It should be easy to update and maintain. But there is a platform engineering team that's very focused on that. And then we typically put on top of this IDPs, and those IDPs are those golden paths that developers will follow that will plug directly into the control plane itself, and trigger the behavior for the control plane itself. So I'd say, I guess more succinctly, it can take a little while to build out, but once you've built it, it's not that hard to maintain.
And then maybe, Craig, if you could, can you talk a little bit about these golden paths? Because there's some folks look at a golden path and almost equate it to a tool or a decision or some capability. When we talk golden paths, we're talking a little bit differently, and golden paths can be owned by any number of constituents in the organization. But can you give a couple examples of what you mean when you say golden path and how complete that is?
Yeah, so what I think of when I say golden path is, so I guess I'll even stop back from the mission statement. The mission statement is to get away from these large monolithic teams who own individual applications, and then they own all things inside of their application, to shifting organizations to being a series of interconnected components or capabilities across the entire business. So our mission, should we choose to accept, is to allow these individual application teams to own their own direction, and but not create this total sense of chaos within your ecosystem, or what I call cloud entropy, which is a constant rate of change that's unhealthy. And so the golden paths for us are ways for engineers to come and say, hey, I want to create a new microservice. I want to create a new producer, a new consumer, a new thing that I need to build. But it's an aggregation of a bunch of a set of different archetypes that the organization is operationalized, and meets all of our architectural patterns, our SLOs and SLAs, and all those things that we need as an organization. But it's a very simple way for a user to come in and say, I need a new microservice, and then that will stitch together all of our infrastructure as code, whether it's Terraform or Pulumi or whatever it is, and the scaffolding and the dependent libraries will get pulled in, and then the CI/CD pipeline as well is all part of that single golden path. And then the user doesn't really, the developer in this case, have to think about how to stitch that all together. And then the golden path is exactly that. It follows on through. And so now we know we're deploying artifacts that we feel comfortable with as an organization, that will interact with our control plane, that will meet our security concerns, our architectural concerns, our deployment concerns, and our operations concerns. And so for us, the golden path will cut through all of that, but it's a single mechanism. And then the IDP, the portal aspect of the IDP is where the developer will go and just say, I need one of these, and then it's really easy to do the right thing. And I think that's the shift, is getting away from, here's what good looks like, to just follow this, and it's super easy to do the right thing. And that's how the IDP fits in it.
So just
or those golden paths, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, well, adding to that in terms of golden paths, Craig. So an organization goes through this process, call it identifying these patterns that formulates these golden paths. They manifest themselves in the IDP. So the idea is you achieve a degree of, I'll call it automation, but a developer experience where they can come to the IDP, understand, hey, this is what I'm looking for as a particular type of application or product team. And so the path is, laid out in front of them in terms of how to get there.
Yes.
Do I have that pretty accurate?
Yeah, you have that so it's the IDP. The golden path itself is the path laid out, makes it as easy as possible to follow along, and again, spend more mental cycles on building features, less on how to stitch it together. The golden path will do all of that stitching together. The other aspect of the IDP is really a communication tool, because if you think about how we're oftentimes breaking up organizations into, instead of the individual applications, but those capabilities and those capability sets, often called domains, then we need to share tech docs and APIs and statuses and information about each of those. And so the IDP we find a great mechanism to not just follow the golden path, but to communicate across all these disparate teams.
So one big question then. So when you listen to this, it sounds amazing, but it also sounds intimidating. So if I'm listening, if I'm a customer, is this something that I have to invest an incredible amount even to get started, or are there places that we can start and start biting bite-sized chunks out of this? How much of an investment before I can really start to see some of the benefits? And what is a starting point look like for some of our customers?
Yeah, so great question. I would say you don't have to invest a lot up front, and actually would recommend not doing it. We occasionally see failed implementations of this sort of thing where they're trying to do it across the entire organization and bring everybody in this one umbrella, and we'll spend 11 months figuring this all out. And in reality, the smaller bite-sized approach is a much better approach. So installing an IDP and is very easy. Setting up a golden paths, very easy. Now, defining all your archetypes and across the entire organization and every single golden path you're going to need in the future is pretty daunting. We discourage that. So what we would typically see is focus on areas that are the lowest hanging fruit. Now, that might be a net new area, might be a new business unit, might be an existing domain that's that is very aggressive in the marketplace with a lot of feature development, and so help to identify what those are, and we'll work with you to figure that out, and then focus there, and then build that first golden path, and then come back, rinse and repeat, come back, rinse and repeat, and before you know it, you start having more archetypes and golden paths that you can follow, and it becomes this this ever growing mechanism to accelerate your developer experience. And so would definitely recommend starting small, and we almost always do that. But where to start, sort of driven by your motivators, and we'll work with you to figure those out. And then the last thing I'd say is, one of the things I preach is you don't have to answer every question you're going to need to answer in your journey to bring in a hybrid control plane or an IDP or both, but you need to put in processes and ways of answering these types of questions so that when you need a new golden path, you can define it, you can work with your architecture teams or your communities, build it, get it out, get people consuming it. And as long as you have the processes in place to do that, then it's much less daunting. You're not trying to answer every question. You're trying to put in processes to answer the future questions that you're going to have.
And with that, we were going to bring this short episode on all things cloud, hybrid control plane, IDPs, golden paths, and architectural patterns to a close. And we're going to continue this conversation, Craig, and unpack this on the next time we have you. But in the interim, for all of those out there that are listening, please go to ahead.com. Please reach out to Darren, myself, or Craig Martin, and we are conduits to the Ahead organization for you. And we look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts on how we can help your organization and your hybrid cloud journey as a whole. Thank you for listening.